In this series, I'm going to start with 3 Fire King structure decks at a budget of $25 a week to build a powerful, consistent, competitive, and most importantly, fun Yu-Gi-Oh deck. When the time is right, I'll take that deck to a regional, and then a YCS. The road won't be easy, but I know we can do it. Welcome to the Yu-Gi-Oh Budget Challenge. What's up, Ocean? You got Matt here, and welcome to the first episode of the Yu-Gi-Oh Budget Challenge. You guys heard the intro. We have 3 Fire King structure decks and $25 weekly to spend to build a competitive and fun Yu-Gi-Oh deck. If you've seen series like Sealed Only, Ballin' on a Budget, and playing Yu-Gi-Oh properly, you should have a pretty good idea of what to expect from this series, essentially because it's a combination of all 3 of those series. But just like those series, we have to start somewhere. So I have 3 Fire King structure decks, and we're going to go ahead and build a competitive deck using just these decks for episode 1. So if you're excited for the video and the Yu-Gi-Oh Budget Challenge, then make sure to smash the like button. If we hit 150 likes on the video, then I'll bring you episode 2 next week. Also, if you like deck profiles, combo guides, meta discussions, and competitive Yu-Gi-Oh videos just like this one, you're going to love this channel. So make sure to subscribe and hopefully for end of year goal of 4,000 subscribers. That being said, it's time for episode 1 of the Yu-Gi-Oh Budget Challenge. Let's jump into it. So 3 of the Fire King structure deck reloaded. Now this deck is obviously fantastic. There's a ton of great cards in here that you can get to make a really powerful deck with just very minimal investment, and we're looking to do that today. We have 3 of these structures we've opened up, popped into a deck and some sleeves, and we are looking to get a few W's today at locals. So what are we going to be rocking with? Well, of course, before I move on, I just want to say that we are starting off a bit behind the 8 ball because we are going up against people who have fully constructed decks when we're playing a deck with just, 3 structure decks. And one of the reasons why I felt like it was important to make this series was because that I want to show you can actually compete at a high level with just these 3 structure decks and a little bit of extra investment and practice. So starting off, of course, we have the 3 copies of the legendary Fire King Ponix. This card is so good in the strategy. Pretty much a mandatory card to play with 3 copies. Getting us our search is really good for getting us either to Fire King Island or Fire King Sanctuary to then get us to Fire King Island, and of course either removal options in Skyburn or recovery options in the Fire King Circle. We also have 3 copies of the Fire King High Avatar Kieran, another amazing card. This one here I think is actually the best card in the strategy because even when we're playing at a full power version, we're probably going to want this at 3 copies in the deck just because of the ability it can have to summon itself out and destroy other cards we have, so we can trigger their effects, but also when it's destroyed, we can have the non-target pop and the non-target revival or summon from hand, which is really good. So I definitely think this card is going to be seeing play probably the most throughout the rest of the build. Then we have 3 copies of the Sacred Fire King Garunix. This one is another amazing card in this strategy. Just really, you have to play at 3 copies right now. Eventually, we might cut it down to 2. I think 1 is too little, but 2 for the future will probably be our main goal. But again, for right now, 3 is great because there's a limited amount of cards that are actually good in the strategy, and this is just a pretty big monster. Can get to pretty easily 3,900 attack by having this destroying Kieran in the deck, gaining the 1,200 attack, and getting to 3,900 attack to help close out games is really nice. We're also playing 2 copies of Arvata. Now, Arvata is a monster negate for the strategy. It's this is actually the first old card we're talking about today. The fact that this card here doesn't have an effect when a card is destroyed, I should say, but has an effect when our opponent will activate a monster effect. We can negate it and then destroy a fire, which is really nice, obviously. But we also have the effect of when it's destroyed, we can target a card in our graveyard, a fire in our graveyard, and then special summon it back, which is obviously really important. We then are going to be rocking with our 2 copies of Fire King Avatar Rang Valley. Now, this card here is also really solid. It's a new card from the structure deck. I don't want to play at 2 copies. I really don't want to. I think even 1 is kind of pushing it, but for the time being, because the limitations we have to our pool, I want to have it also a free body on the field if a fire on the field is destroyed, or a Fire King rather is destroyed on field, which is kind of important to get this on the field for a spell and trap negate. We also have 2 copies of Barong. Barong is another one of the old cards in the strategy. I felt like I kind of had to play this here as 2 copies just because, again, there's a limited number of cards that are actually good in the strategy right now with just the structure decks, but as soon as I get the chance to, I'm probably going to cut these 2 cards down to 1 copy each. So, but for right now, I'm not mad at it. We're then playing the 1 copy of Fire King High Avatar Garunix, the old card from the structure deck, and I think this is actually a really solid card for right now because when it's destroyed, the next standby phase, it comes back and then dark holes the entire board except for itself, which is really nice, but it's also level 8, which is great to go into our Xyz plays, but it has another effect, doesn't really come up too often. It's mainly going to be destroyed off the effects of either Fire King Island or something like the Arvada or the Rang Valley, or most importantly and most notably, the bigger Sacred Fire King Garunix. We're also playing the 1 copy of Sacred Phoenix of Nephthys. This is just there because I know my locals, they have quite a bit of trap decks. Labyrinth runs around, Traptrix runs around. There's also Sky Striker that it comes around a bit, so I want to make sure I had something there to just be able to handle that. So having Sacred Phoenix is nice, but again, depending on the matchup, we're going to side it out. We're also playing 2 copies of Fencing Fire Ferret. Now, Fencing Fire Ferret's a card that is a little awkward in the strategy because it doesn't really do anything on its own, but when paired with either Fire King Island, it becomes destruction, allows us to plus off the destruction, which is really nice. And on top of that, it also gets us a great card to send, or destroy rather, off the effect of Grunix, Sacred Grunix, while it's in our deck, to get access to removal whenever we need it. And our final monster in the deck is going to be the one hand trap that we have. 3 copies of Droll and Lockbird. Again, a mandatory card to play right now. Eventually, this will probably be going to the side deck, but I'm pretty happy with it in the main for the time being. So that's going to be it for our monsters right now. We are rocking, I believe it's 22 monsters, if I'm not mistaken. I could be wrong on that. But either way, we're moving on to our spells and traps. And of course, every Fire King deck has to start off, of course, with the field spell, 3 copies of Fire King Island. Eventually, we're going to drop this down to 2, maybe even 1 copy, depending on how many copies of Fire King Sanctuary we're playing. For the time being, we're playing 3 of each because, again, we're low on cards that are actually really good, and because we have fewer ways to see Ponix, we're not playing the Wanted or Dogmatica packages, so we have to have ways to be able to see these cards to get our entire engine online. So 3 of them for this time is really important, and I probably won't be dropping these down to 2 for any time for the foreseeable future. Maybe Island goes to 2 and Sanctuary goes to 3 as we get more cards, but I feel like for right now, I'm pretty happy with the ratios. We're also playing 2 copies of Skyburn here. Skyburn is another new card in the strategy. It's a really solid option for removing cards from the field, also triggering the effects of our Fire King monsters. I definitely want to have it in the strategy at 2 copies right now. I'm also playing the 1 copy of Circle of the Fire Kings. In the final build, right now in my final build that I'm actually playing, and if you guys want to see what we're actually building towards, I'll put a card at the top right of the screen. It'll be right like up, where is it? Up there. So make sure to check that out if you want to see our final build. But honestly, I feel like it's a card that could be in the final build, but may not be. Right now I am playing in mine, but we'll see down the line. Our next card is going to be for consistency. We are playing 6 Beast Warriors, so we're playing 3 copies of Fire Formation Tenki. I'm playing my supers right now because I matched this, well, give away the comments to someone who needed them. Here, these 3 aren't actually from the structure deck, but again, it doesn't matter too much. Right now, this card is great because we do have 6 copies of Beast Warriors in our deck. Eventually, when we cut that down to possibly 4, maybe even 3, this card is going to still be solid because we'll have possibly the Wanted package to be able to send it to the graveyard. But I do think it's pretty important that we do play it in the strategy right now. And that's going to be it for our spells. It's going to be 12 spell cards here. We are playing a 40 card deck. So we do have, of course, then 3 copies of Infinite Impermanence and 3 copies of Torrential Tribute. Now, these cards are also mandatory to play in the strategy right now. Imperm is obviously one of the best hand traps in the game today. Thank God I got a reprint in this deck. If it didn't, I don't know how possible this challenge would be to do quickly. It's able to be much quicker because you have Imperm to start off, and of course a Droll in there as well. And then Torrential Tribute is a great card too. This card is not once per turn. It's not, which is great. You can activate it during the summoning window. So you summon a card back, your opponent does a ton of stuff to try and like protect against it. You can then go, yeah, we're still in the summoning window, chain TT, and then blow up the board, and you can then trigger effects off of that as well, which is really nice. So that's going to be our 40 card main deck. Moving on to the extra deck, of course, we're playing 3 copies of Grunix Eternity, the main boss monster of the strategy. Just a fantastic card. On summon, being a dark hole for everything but itself is great. Having a spell and trap removal option as well is also really good. And on top of that, when it's destroyed by any way, we have the ability to just bring back as many Fire Kings as was attached to it. Again, really solid there. We're also having 3 copies of Coach King Giant Trainer, another card that's pretty mandatory to play in the strategy because again, we only have 4 different cards from the extra deck, so we're gonna play it. I don't think it's gonna come up too often, but I did want to have it just in case I felt like it was necessary. And then of course we have the 3 copies of the Diamond Direwolf as well, and 3 copies of our only link in the strategy being Hita Fire Charmer Ablaze. Now, this card actually can come up right now in the strategy. In our final build, we're probably going to be playing this at 1 copy because fire decks are pretty good this format. But yeah, this is going to be our extra deck for the time being. Only cards we have access to. Hopefully, we can get some upgrades pretty quickly. I do have an idea of what I want to go to next after this week, and if we can get that, then that'd be obviously amazing for us. Onto the side deck, we have of course 3 copies of Solemn Judgment. I was debating putting this in the main deck, but I think siding is just a bit better right now because we're not always guaranteed to go first, and honestly I'd probably want to set up my advantage loop more than I would want to have Solemn Judgment set. In terms of other going first cards, we have Chain Destruction. Now this card here I haven't seen in many people's pure only Fire King deck with the structure decks, and I think it's actually pretty good. It's really solid against a few different decks in the format. Notably something like Fluandereeze is really nice to hit with this, and Flu is just a pain in the ass to deal with in general for this strategy, so having it to be able to get rid of all the Flu names in the graveyard, in the deck rather, is also going to be really solid. We also have our going second cards, 3 copies of Alpha Master of Beasts, which is a great form of removal. We can get rid of multiple cards with this card because a lot of our deck are Beast Warriors, and Winged Beasts. We also have 3 copies of Dogron the Mad Flame Kaiju, which is again another form of removal. And then finally, the last card in our side deck is going to be 3 copies of Dark Hole. Now, some people are playing the Power Sync Stone. I don't think it's necessary to have. It's a bit slow. It doesn't really get the job done too much. I feel like having more reactive cards like Dark Hole and the Dogoran and the Alpha are a bit more impactful, and I really think that Chain Destruction is going to be a bit more impactful than people think it's going to be. So that's going to be our structure deck, our 3 structure decks molded together to one single deck. I'm hoping that we can do well. And again, if you guys want to see what we're actually aiming for, then make sure to check out the video I'm posting in the cards. It'll have the full deck that I'm playing when I'm not playing with the budget challenge deck, but I am pretty happy with our list in general. So with that being said, it's time for locals. For today's feature match, we're paired up against Gabe on his Vanquish Soul Sword Soul list. Game 1, he's able to establish both of his engines with Rock and Borger on the side of the field with Sinister Long One. He banishes my Sanctuary with Long One, but I'm able to resolve Garunix as well to destroy the original High Avatar Garunix to board wipe next turn. But as I attempt to end my turn, Caesar Valix is able to destroy my field spell, which will blow up my entire board here. I pass back to him with only 2 set cards on my field. Onyx comes back to my hand in the standby phase, and Garunix returns as well to blow up the board. He chains Longwan and Borger to burn us, and Valius to protect itself, and I flip up Torrential Tribute as the highest chain link to blow up the entire board regardless. Since the fire was destroyed, I'll summon back Garunix and use its effect to destroy Barong in my deck for follow-up. I'm feeling really good since I have Kieran and Ponix in hand with another set Torrential, but I TT too early thinking he already normal summoned. He then proceeds to normal Moye and has full Sword Soul combo 2, and he takes game 1. Game 2, we're going first, and my hand is awful. It's Fire King Island, Droll, Imperm, Torrential Tribute, and Solemn Judgment. I start the game off with Island, I destroy Droll, and I get to search for my copy of Ponix, which I then normal summon and try and get the search off, but he's able to go ahead and ash that. He's never played against Fire King, so we didn't know he should have ashed the field spell instead. I'm forced to go ahead and set 3 cards and pass. He summons out Longwan by discarding Jiaolong and gets himself a token as well, and here I'm going to go ahead and Torrential. And honestly, the rest of his hand is going second card, so he passes back to me. I'm able to go full Fire King combo, and from there, with his bad hand and the advantage I'm gaining, he can't come back from that. He was trying his hardest to turn on talents, but he just couldn't do it. Game 3, he goes first, and this time he's only able to get his Sword Soul engine online, ending with Sinister Longwan and Chi-Xiao. Thankfully, I drew Alpha, so I normal Arvada and Special Alpha to try and force out his interruptions. So he long wants to banish and burn, I attempt to negate with Arvada, and he negates it with Chi-Xiao banishing Blackout, giving himself a token. I have no choice here but to crash Arvada into Longwan to trigger Garunix in hand, destroying Kieran in my deck to bring back Arvada and destroy the Longwan. Then I can attack over the rest of his board. Main 2, I can Sanctuary to search for Island. I destroy my Garunix on field and search for Kieran, and on resolution, I can summon out Rangbali for my hand. So I have Rangbali for a spell trap negate and Arvada for a monster negate with a live Kieran in hand and a Garunix in graveyard, and I have a set card as well. On his turn, Gabe's able to special summon Druid's Worm and then use a Kaiju over my Arvada. He then normal summons his Raisin to search for Jiaolong. On resolution, I use Kieran in hand to destroy my Rangbali to special it out, and then in turn bring back my Garunix in graveyard, which destroys the 3rd Kieran in my deck to special back the Arvada and destroy the Razin, but not before he uses Razin's effect to destroy the Kaiju he gave me. He'll try and summon out Jiaolong, but I can negate it with the effect of Arvada. He then goes to battle phase and attacks Druid's Worm into Arvada, destroying it, but from there, once he passes turn back to me, we're about to hit time the round, but with a combination of Fire King Island and Circle of the Fire King, I'm able to get to lethal before time is called in the round. So we end up taking the round 2-1, and that's only round 1 of the tournament. Round 2, we're paired up against Angelo, who's on Labyrinth, and after a grueling round 1 that almost went to time, we were able to clean this one up in 2 quick games. He bricked game 1 on hand traps, and game 2 I was able to establish my advantage loop through his interruptions, so we're now 2-0. Round 3, we're up against Gabriel on Trap Tricks. In game 1 I went first and was able to set up enough interruptions to stop his deck, but game 2 I'm really behind the 8th ball after he went into Abyss Dweller, but my monsters are really big, and eventually I'm able to resolve Skyburn to destroy his back row, and from there we could take the game. So we're now 3-0 with just 3 structure decks. Round 4, we're up against Unchained, and this is for first place, and unfortunately our non-engine just wasn't good enough to compete against what's already a tough matchup against a really tough opponent. Game 1 he wins easily through Droll and Lockbird, and game 2 I managed to keep it close, but I'm on 100 life points and time is called. So 3-1 today at locals, good enough for 3rd place with a 6 win and 3 loss record. Alright, so we ended up coming in 3rd place at locals, and we don't get any actual prizing at my locals in terms of like packs. We can choose to use it for packs, but essentially it's just store credit. So 1st place ends up getting $15, 2nd gets 10, and 3rd place gets 5. And like I said, we got 3rd place. We ended up losing out on our tiebreakers, unfortunately. The person who got 2nd place, he lost to the guy who we lost to in the final round. His tiebreakers just before that were better. He also got the bye round 1, so it ended up going into his favor there, but it is what it is. Anyways, we end up having 2 packs here. We have Valiant Smashers, the latest set to come out in the TCG, and of course OTS 23. So whatever we get in here, we can actually add to our collection or we can sell off. So let's just go ahead and open up and see what we can do, hoping for an ulti. We've gone through a lot of ultis so far, so hopefully we can get a Kurikara or an enemy controller, because there haven't been that many pulled, and we have a Stovey Torby with a bunch of nothing. So all this is just like bulk. I'll try and see if I can make a trade for the Stovey Torby, move values, get some extra cash, and get an extra card, but for the time being, it's nothing. And then Valiant Smashers, potential for nothing, but potential for cards like Baguska, I believe, in this set as well, which is nice, and hopefully we can get an Ultra. ideally some Centurion stuff if people are looking for some Centurion. So we have Dark Honest, which is useless for us. Memento Goblin, Summoner Monk. What is this? This is Fracture Dance. Oh, we got an Ultra. Yeah, Combined Creation. Okay, cool. This is the, I mean, look, it's not very expensive, but it is what it is. The Field Spell Force, and then a Stained Glass of Light and Dark. So honestly, I'm not mad at this. We ended up getting the Ultra for it, so we'll be able to at least add this to our trade binder for this series, and hopefully we can end up getting some nice cards. Anyways, that's going to do it for this week's episode of the Yu-Gi-Oh! Budget Challenge. Every journey has to start somewhere, but next week is exciting because we get to start upgrading our deck, and I have a pretty good idea of what I want to pick up first. That being said, if you enjoyed, leave a like for episode 2. If you have suggestions for this series, then let me know in the comments, and of course, subscribe if you haven't already. We're on the road to 4,000 subs, and we can't get there without you. Thanks for watching. I hope you enjoyed it, and I'll see you all next time.